Up next on VIC, noon to 1, it's the place to be. Talking sports with the MVPs, that's Miller, Vicari and Passante. NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, college sports, whatever you need. The MVP show where you need to be. Sports radio on VIC, that's MVP. Sundays on VIC, that's MVP. Sports Talk Radio, VIC.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into the MVP show for March 21st, 2021, in the thick of the men's NCAA Division I tournament. And I'm John Vicari alongside Dan Passante and Brennan Miller. And Brennan, you probably, I know how Dan's feeling. I'm with him right now. Brennan, you're not with us currently of this recording. Earlier in the day, you probably weren't feeling so great, weren't feeling your best, and that's because you got the second shot of the vaccine. But events later tonight, and we're recording this on a Friday for Sunday, but events that happened, I guess now earlier tonight, even though it's pretty late. The Syracuse Orange, moving on to the round of 32.
Yes, they did, John, and they shot the freaking lights out the building. I was sitting here watching this, as I usually do when I'm at home, and being incredibly vocal, especially in those first few minutes of the game where Cuse was terrible. Not just Cuse, but Cuse and San Diego State, I don't think, had any more than 4 points apiece for the first, 4 minutes of that game, where both of them went down, and I think they were combined 1 for 11 to start off the game. So it was bad at the beginning of the game, and then all of a sudden, you get the ball into Buddy Boeheim's hands, and he just starts knocking down 3-ball after 3-ball after 3-ball after 3-ball after 3-ball, and eventually he gets up to 30 points. I mean, the man does not miss. Absolutely does not miss. It was a great game from Syracuse. It was just a classic situation of teams not knowing how to play against the zone once we get to March Madness. We see it a lot where ACC teams, especially in the ACC tournament, know how to play against that Syracuse zone. They've played against it. They've practiced for it, and they're ready to compete against it. But San Diego State coming out of their Mountain West, yes, Mountain West, not Pac-12, yeah, coming out of the Mountain West, they don't play a zone like Syracuse runs. Syracuse is exclusively zone. They never go man unless they're pressing, and teams just don't know how to deal with that. It's absolutely insane to me how you can sit there for a week knowing that you're going to have to go up against really the best zone in the country, mostly because it's one of the only zones in the country, and not be prepared to play for it. Play against it at least. They were just chucking up deep threes for the duration of the game, and when those don't fall in the first half, that's when you put up the least amount of points that you've scored in an entire first half, like San Diego State did. So I think Cuse looks very good going forward. It looks as though they're going to play West Virginia. That game is not 100% finished, but it's pretty close to being finished, so I think we can just chalk that one up. Looks like they're going to be playing West Virginia, who has been a very, very good team for this year. Beating my other college basketball team, Texas Tech, twice this season. But I think one of the recipes to winning in March is being unpredictable on defense, and another one is just hitting the threes. And Syracuse did both of those things tonight, and that makes them very, very dangerous going forward.
You mentioned the word insane, and the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, right? Correct? Yeah. San Diego State.
Albert Einstein said that.
Yeah, San Diego State just chucked up threes the entire time. It was infuriating to watch if you're rooting against Syracuse, as I was, and just watching the game as a basketball game in general. It was terrible. It was terrible strategy. There was a point in the game with 7:50 left in the second half, or in the game in general. Buddy Boeheim had 6 for 8 from the 3-point line, correct? Yeah. San Diego State at that point shot 4 for 30 from behind the arc. 4 for 30. Buddy Boeheim, just from behind the arc, was beating the entire Aztec team with under 8 minutes to go in the game. Abysmal performance. Unbelievable. And then you go to the first half. San Diego State in the last 9:41 of that first half didn't score a point. They didn't give themselves any shot in this game. And they made it, I won't even say the word close, but they made it not as bad as it seemed. San Diego State did late in the game because Syracuse just was more relaxed in their zone and let them hit a couple open threes. But the fact that San Diego State never tried something different. a couple times, they got the ball inside in the paint and they were swatted away, and that Syracuse interior defense is something that probably is overlooked in this game, but they did a really good job. I think they had 5 blocks in total as a unit. But, I mean, San Diego State, try something different. I understand the mid-range game is, it's frowned upon in college basketball and pretty much in basketball circles, but when the 3 is shot at 4 for 30, you got to do something. You got to take the open look. It's unbelievable, and it's amazing, and you said it at the top, Brennan, when you broke down this game. This zone that Syracuse runs, it's not like it's a zone that they invented yesterday or invented this season.
Every year.
Someone figure this out who's not an ACC. I mean, if you're a San Diego State coaching staff, you're calling teams in the ACC, hey, is there anything you could tell me on how to run the zone? You're watching film. You're worried about that, especially in a game where as the San Diego State coaches had to know, that their team was going to only shoot from the outside, and that's probably how they got in the tournament, by hitting a lot of shots from behind the arc. And if you go cold against Syracuse and that's your only option, you got to find something to figure it out. And that zone that Syracuse runs forces you to take deep threes, because although they're the shot that's coveted now, as I mentioned, it's not a great look.
If you can't penetrate the zone and get inside with big men, then it forces you to take threes from a position where you really don't want to take them.
Yeah.
And that's crucial. Dan, you're like a closeted Syracuse fan? Yeah, Syracuse fan.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I do like your background today. I will say.
Nice.
Yeah. But what did you think of the game?
Well, I don't want to slander the great Jim Boeheim because he's won a lot of games, but, could it be that the reason that he still has a job today is because he wins games like this in the tournament? During the regular season, so many people are just like, get him out of here. I've had enough of this zone. Come on. And then they win in the tournament, and we go through this cycle again next year.
Yep.
Yeah, one of the things that we need to have as a takeaway from this game is the fact that Syracuse shot 55% from 3 total. I'm not going to say that they can't do that again, but I'll say that it's unlikely that any team in the tournament, shoot. I'm not going to predict anybody to shoot 55% from the 3-point line. They shot 55.3% from the field altogether. They only took 13 free throws. That's not a gigantic number. And Syracuse had 8 blocks. So, it just really it becomes apparent to me that San Diego State just wasn't really prepared to play this game. It didn't seem like. And that really comes down to the coaching to me. Out there in the Mountain West, they must have film. Maybe they have YouTube. I don't know. It can't be that hard to maybe look up something, but they did not seem prepared to play Syracuse tonight. And it showed. It really did.
It's Pacific time, so they had 3 less hours to look at film.
Exactly. That's what it was.
Yeah. Oh, hopefully. Buddy Boeheim, by the way, the star of this game. I think if anyone looks at this game, it's Buddy Boeheim and the Syracuse Orange, and that's no knock at everyone else, but 30 points for him, 11 for 15 from the field, and 7 for 10 from behind the arc. An absolutely phenomenal game for him. And Brennan, it's funny because I don't think at the beginning of the season, maybe I'm wrong, but that you thought Buddy Boeheim would be putting up late in the season 2 back-to-back 30-point games. The last time he did it was the game that Syracuse lost to Virginia in the ACC tournament. Is anyone going to stop Buddy Boeheim? 30 points? I mean, he can't be this good. There was one shot he took in this game where it's above, or not above, right in front of the pretty much the center court logo. It probably wasn't that deep, but it felt that deep. And the shot clock was ticking down, and he just got it because his back was facing away from the hoop, turned around, just chucked it, and it went in. He couldn't miss.
Yeah, he's played 5 games in March. He's averaging 27.6 points. No.
I mean,
no, stopping him.
You look at the roster for Syracuse. I didn't think Buddy Boeheim would be the guy leading. I know he's a senior, and I know he's been a part of his dad's program for a long time, but
he's a junior.
Is he? He's a junior. Great. That's nightmare fuel. So.
Also, I just want to point out this tweet. Mm-hmm. It's from James Zuba, who writes for SB Nation. Nunez Magician is the Syracuse SB Nation. Yeah. And after the game, obviously, they interview Jim Boeheim, and Boeheim's exact words were that if Buddy was short, or he says he knew that Buddy was going to have a chance to be good at basketball, and that if he was shorter, he might be at, and he names 2 schools, Lemoyne, which is in Syracuse, and Ithaca, the two schools that Jim Boeheim names as possible locations if Buddy Boeheim was just a little bit shorter. So I quote tweeted it. What could have been for Ithaca if Buddy Boeheim was just draining threes in Ben Light Gymnasium?
It's nice for them to pick a D2 and a D3 school. Dan, do you have any final thoughts on this nonsense?
If Buddy Boeheim could have been a Bomber, that's going to be an ESPN 30 for 30 someday. What if I told you? I can't wait for that. He sees really hot at the right time. I think a lot like the baseball playoffs. If you catch fire at the right time in March Madness, who knows what can go on. We're seeing that with Buddy Boeheim.
Yeah, we are. And Syracuse will play West Virginia in the second round, and that's today if you are listening. And we will give our picks for all the games that are on today's slate, including that one, although that's probably the easiest game that you can predict where we will lean and where we will put our picks, just because you just watch this segment or listen to it and know where we stand. Going to be a tough matchup for Syracuse, though. Brennan, have you looked into this West Virginia matchup at all? Do they match up well? I don't want to go too, but obviously people listening to this, it's today. So
I haven't looked at matchups. I know a lot about West Virginia strictly because they play in the Big 12. Sure. And like I said earlier, my other college basketball team, for no apparent reason other than I like to play with Texas Tech in NCAA 14 when I was younger, is Texas Tech. Mm-hmm. So I know a lot about this West Virginia team. I know that they are a very, very good team. They put up a lot of points. The Big 12 in basketball is a lot like the Big 12 in football, where teams just score and score and score and score. So it'll be interesting. I'd take the over, whatever it is.
Really? There you go. And that I'd be excited for that in a shootout. And usually when you're talking about Syracuse University, it's how this game sort of played out, even though it did get, as I mentioned, it was high scoring towards the end in terms of, San Diego State started making baskets because Syracuse was more relaxed. Don't know if it hit the over/under. Was not tracking that, but it did.
It did. So there you go. It was a bad beat cover. 26 points in the last 2:06.
So there you go, and that just sort of shows how the game was low scoring throughout. And then once Syracuse got to a comfortable spot, the points started coming. But we'll see. It might be a track meet against the Big 12's West Virginia, and again, those games will be picked later on in the show. All right, when we return, we're going to break down the NFL free agency signings, mainly from all three of our teams, as well as the big ones, and whether or not they will make an impact for the season coming up, as well as we mentioned the Sunday game picks for today. A lot of basketball games to pick. We will give you those as well. And the NBA trade deadline is this week, so we will preview that for you and see if local teams are going to get involved, and if my favorite NBA player, Kyle Lowry, is on the move or not. Stay where you are. You're watching or listening to the MVP Show on YouTube and VIC Radio Ithaca.
Hey besties, if you love VIC Radio as much as we do, you want to know what's going on in the studio, or you want to stay in the VIC loop, why not follow us on our Twitter at VIC Radio and our Instagram, which is also at VIC Radio. Keep listening to the best of What's Next, your favorite indie music station.
VIC Radio is the voice of Ithaca College. Here's a campus organization you can get involved in.
Want to help bring a little more love to your campus community? IC Random Acts of Kindness Club meets every Monday from 8 to 9 p.m. in the Business School, Room 104. Stop by to socialize, participate in fun events, get creative, and be kind. For more information, please email randomactsofkindnessic@gmail.com.
Want to get your organization's message on the air? Email community@vicradio.org to connect with the Campus Community Involvement Director.
Welcome back to the MVP Show. You're listening on VIC Radio or watching on our YouTube channel. It's Dan Passante, Brennan Miller, and I'm John Vicari, and we just broke down Syracuse's win from Friday night, and now we're looking at this past week in terms of NFL free agency, and it was eventful for my team, and it was eventful for Dan's team. But Brennan, the Green Bay Packers, the two-time defending NFC Championship losers, did not make a lot of moves thus far in the deadline. And you can come back at me for that little dig, and whatever. I know where you're going to go.
Yeah, making it to the NFC, making it to the playoffs really is
yeah.
But no, I can talk about the Packers quick, and I'll go first because there's really nothing to talk about. Yes, they signed Aaron Jones. The conversation for Green Bay was whether or not they were going to re-sign Aaron Jones or Jamal Williams, because they drafted both of them in the same year, and both of them panned out to be pretty good picks. They went with Jones. I like it. I think that they didn't overpay. I think it works out both for them, for the Packers and for Aaron Jones. Other than that, they have signed nobody. They have placed tenders on a few players. I think they put a second-round restricted tender on Robert Tonyan, so he'll stick around next year. Other than that, the biggest thing that happened to the Packers is that they let Corey Linsley go to the Chargers, Tim Boyle, backup quarterback for forever, go to the Lions. Jamal Williams also signed with the Lions, and then Christian Kirksey, a linebacker, signed with the Texans. That's it. I'm done. It's boring.
I'll get mine out of the way, Dan, so you could talk about your team who made the AFC Championship as well and what Buffalo's done, because it's been eventful. But for some reason, the Giants are all involved in this free agency period. They've made some good signings, and they've also made one or two signings that I'm sort of looking at and don't think they make an impact or don't think they were really necessary. I'll start with what I think is their biggest signing, and this may surprise some people, but I think their best signing was the receiver from Cincinnati, John Ross. Got him for 1 year and $2 million, a low-risk move for a player who has high-reward potential, I should say, and he's so fast. And that's what the Giants need in their receiving core. They have Darius Slayton, who could be a deep ball option, and Sterling Shepard's a possession receiver. Golden Tate's out the door. Evan Ingram, he's a Pro Bowl tight end, but is he really? No. And I'll get to one of the later signings that also added to the receiving core. But John Ross, it's an underrated move, and it's so worth it. If he could live up to the potential, which was a first-round pick by the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Giants have him for 1 year and $2 million, it's a great move. Can I say, will he pan out or will he fit in the Giants' offensive scheme? No, but it's adding a very fast wide receiver, which is the future of the NFL. You need someone fast on jet sweeps or just to give you an underneath option and a check down option, and I think a check down option of John Ross is better than what the Giants had last season in that role, and if that's all he is, it's still an improvement for the offense. What I think is not an improvement for the offense is going out and getting Mike Glennon. He's going to serve as the backup quarterback. We had a guy, his name's Colt McCoy, and he beat the Seattle Seahawks, who were a playoff team.
Yeah, Mike Glennon's neck is super long, though.
Yeah, besides a great neck, what does Mike Glennon have that Colt McCoy doesn't? Mike Glennon can't scramble. Mike Glennon hasn't shown that he could, and I know this is funny, but when's the last time he beat a team that was good? Mike Glennon. Oh, okay, sure. I believe that. We'll bring him in over Colt. All I saw last year was Colt McCoy try his hardest to keep the Giants in the playoff push, and he is not, I don't want to say the only reason, but one of the reasons that the Giants had a meaningful game in January and the last week of the season. It was because Colt McCoy stepped up when he had to. I don't want to say rewarding him because, you don't give him a big contract just because he served in a backup role, but to bring in somebody else and Mike Glennon to learn the system, I don't know. It's questionable. Obviously, there's similarities with Glennon and Daniel Jones. They're both deep ball throwers, but at least Jones, and I'm sure people knock him around the league, but Jones could rush. He has scrambling ability. Colt McCoy scrambling ability, and I think that's where the NFL is going in terms of the quarterback position. So I look at Mike Glennon and I think, okay, sure. Another move that is questionable is bringing Kyle Rudolph. I was a big Kyle Rudolph fan when he was at Notre Dame. I think he was a really good Minnesota Viking. Last year was not a really good year. He did almost nothing. He has injury problems, and you're bringing him in, but still keeping around Evan Ingram. Now, if Kyle Rudolph's going to be your second tight end, okay, I'll take that. But what are you going to do with Evan Ingram? Evan Ingram's owed $6 million, and he's in the fifth year of a player option, so he's sticking around. And, of course, in arbitration and how it would go, well, he was a Pro Bowler, even though every Giant fan would tell you that in the big moments. And when you needed him most, Evan Ingram was not there. And a lot of those receiving yards were pretty much at the end of games where they were losing. And I don't want to say garbage time stats because the Giants didn't get blown out a lot, so it was still trying to contribute to coming back. But Evan Ingram is not a stud tight end. He's not a franchise tight end that the Giants drafted him to be. But he is, and that's the most amazing thing. One of the most undeserving Pro Bowls. And I like Evan Ingram. I liked when we drafted him. But last season was not a great year to build off. So they're bringing in Kyle Rudolph, but that's not the position. That's not someone who's going to fill to the same extent of Ingram. I don't want to say bashed Ingram, but I obviously just went at Ingram a bit. But Kyle Rudolph is not as good of a tight end as Evan Ingram. So bring him in as a 2, I understand, but that means that you should, if you're the Giants, keep Evan Ingram. Now on the defensive side of the ball, this was a home run. Bringing back Leonard Williams, 3 years, $63 million. It's sort of funny because the season before this past one, the Giants traded for Leonard Williams late in the season and with the Jets, who had him, and all they gave up was a 6th-round pick, and people actually at the time believed that the Jets won the deal. I thought it was unnecessary. I just looked at Leonard Williams as pretty much a bust at that point. And this year, he just had a career year. 11.5 sacks at the defensive tackle position, him alongside Dalvin Tomlinson. Even though Dalvin Tomlinson's out the door, he went to Minnesota. But him alongside Dalvin Tomlinson were a formidable front up front for the Giants defense, and he applied a lot of pressure. He was only regarded with the Jets as, an occasional run stopper. He showed he was more than that, and with the 11.5 sacks that I mentioned, and it's nice that he's getting rewarded for that, for his past season with a big money deal. Another defensive move, Reggie Ragland was brought in, and because David Mayo was released. I'm done bloviating about the Giants. I just wanted to give my thoughts on this. I'm going to pass it off to Dan because the Bills added to a team that was an AFC championship, or a team that went to the AFC championship, and we're going to probably laugh about one of their moves, but another one I think is really good.
So let's be honest with the Buffalo Bills people. Throughout history, the Bills have done things that are nauseating, that are bad, that are just plain not smart. But this year is not one of those years. They have re-signed a lot of players that, they want to keep around. They re-signed John Feliciano. A bunch of players. When someone leaves, I'll let you know. But we got pretty much the same team coming back. Two big moves. Number one, Emmanuel Sanders is now a Buffalo Bill. Now, I know what you're thinking. Emmanuel Sanders is getting up there in age. Well, you're right. But last year, Emmanuel Sanders had 61 receptions. He had 726 yards, 5 touchdowns. And, I don't want to go after Drew Brees too hard here, but we know he didn't have a great year last year. So even though Sanders had put up some really good numbers, as Brees is clearly in decline, a fantastic addition to add to, the Bills receiving corps, maybe a little bit more experience. I already have Cole Beasley. Sanders cannot hurt. So happy about that. But let's talk about the big one, people. The Bills signed the Nickelodeon most valuable player of the game. That would be the 2nd-round pick, formerly, from North Carolina, Mitchell Trubisky. Oh. Thank God. This man, you know how talented this guy is? He lost a playoff game, and he still won the Nickelodeon most valuable player. That doesn't happen every day, okay? That is skill. All right. Now, do our Bears fans fed up with Trubisky? Yeah, I mean, they have been for a while. He started quite a few games. I believe he started like 26 games, something like that, like it's in the 20s. He has a lot of experience. So to bring him in as a backup to Josh Allen cannot hurt anything. I'm so happy about that. And, God forbid something happens to Josh Allen. I'm not going to, be happy with anyone who replaces him. But at least Mitchell Trubisky has a lot of experience. He has a 1-year deal. I think that's a no-brainer just to bring him in and see how it goes. We signed the Nickelodeon most valuable player. I just want to say that again. That is the best news that I've gotten in so long. I was so happy when he won that award. I mean, that's some. There's nothing else to say. So far, NFL free agency has gone exactly how I've wanted it to.
There you go. And I don't think, Dan, there's been a lot of off seasons for you that you've been this happy. And I know Trubisky, I think a lot of people shake their head at. You joke with the Nickelodeon valuable player, but it's good backup. I mean, you released Matt Barkley, who I know was a fan favorite in Buffalo, but in terms of Trubisky, I don't look at this. I'll say this. I rather have Mitchell Trubisky as my backup than Mike Glennon. I don't know if that's controversial. I don't know, but I think you'd agree. So that's a huge move. Anything else the Bills added, or you want them to go out and seek, Dan?
Well, I mean, I'd like for them to sign a running back, like a big one, make a splash with that. But other than that, I mean, I really can't complain. You know, they brought back a lot of teams so far, and those two big additions, I think so far they're doing great in the offseason. I think that's what matters.
Absolutely. And in terms of other big signings around the league, one that's going to keep me up at night is Ryan Fitzpatrick going to the Washington football team. It's going to be a very interesting quarterback situation to watch in Washington because it's because it's in between right now Taylor Heineke and Ryan Fitzpatrick. That's that's something. But right now, as a Giant fan, as sad as this may sound, Brennan, because I know you're in a division where you're not too scared of your quarterbacks. I'm frightened of what Washington's going to come out with. I don't like having I don't like seeing Ryan Fitzpatrick or Taylor Heineke. They're guys that are going to steal a game a season, and that game will be against the Giants. Is that paranoia? Maybe. But that's how I feel looking at those signings when most people around the league laughed at it. In terms of other big news, we mentioned it, I think, a couple episodes ago, but J.J. Watt to the Cardinals, I still think is the biggest offseason signing. Correct me if I'm wrong, either of you, but I think that's the biggest signing. Chris Carson inked up a deal with the Seattle Seahawks most recently. Dan, that sort of is tough for you because, you know, Seattle running back who is solid, maybe going to Buffalo, but not the case. And in terms of other quarterback news, not much besides Ryan Fitzpatrick there. And, of course, Andy Dalton going to – who's Andy Dalton going to? I'm blanking on this right now. Andy Dalton going to the Bears. That's where – because Mitchell Trubisky's gone. So now Andy Dalton, the Red Rifle, is going to Chicago. And to the point, Brennan, you have Jared Goff in your division. You have Andy Dalton in your division. And the one team I'm blank, Kirk Cousins in your division. Do any of those guys scare you at all? To round out this. No, it's done.
No.
See, I can't relate. I can't relate.
Not concerned.
So that's most of the moves in NFL free agency. Will probably continue later on this week, and we will recap it next week if there's any big signings, especially from one of our teams. All right, so that does it for our look at NFL free agency. We'll move from free agency to the trade deadline. We'll take a look at the National Basketball Association. Players on the move. For the first time in a while, New York teams right now are in contention. Instead of the Knicks selling, the Knicks may be adding. And the Nets may be adding a piece or two, even though they've have a loaded roster and added to it this season as well. Don't go anywhere because that's on the other side of the break. You're watching and listening to the MVP Show on YouTube and VIC Radio Ithaca.
Hey besties, if you love VIC Radio as much as we do, you want to know what's going on in the studio, or you want to stay in the VIC loop, why not follow us on our Twitter at VIC Radio and our Instagram, which is also at VIC Radio. Keep listening to the best of what's next, your favorite indie music station.
Welcome back to the MVP Show, live on YouTube and VIC Radio Ithaca. You can follow us at the MVP Show on Twitter, where you have our Final Four picks, which we'll get to college basketball later in the show, as well as our upset for March Madness, our main upset. And spoiler, at least of what we know right now of this recording, Dan and Brennan's of Colgate did not happen, unfortunately. So a New York team gone. What was that, Brennan?
You look good at first.
They did, but kept my Final Four pick of Arkansas. They stayed in the tournament and moved on to the round of 32. And we looked at the team for the other New York team who played on Friday, and that was Syracuse, and we talked about that at the open of the show. But now we'll move from talking about college basketball to the NBA. The trade deadline is this week, and we'll see if teams make a move. Dan will start, and we could run down the whole league in terms of where players are going to go. The last trade deadline, and I think it was affected by COVID a bit, not a lot of big moves. What are we looking for? And we'll start local for the NBA this season.
Well, like you said, the last trade deadline was kind of quiet. But this year, there have been some moves that have been bigger. What an open to that segment that I just had. So far, PJ Tucker is now a Buck, and I think that is the biggest news that we need to take note of. The Bucks right now are third in the Eastern Conference, are behind the 76ers, and the Nets. So far, they're 26-14. Adding Tucker can really only help them. Someone who can rebound, someone who can shoot, and someone who can help out Giannis is something that they definitely want to have. So I think that is definitely a positive for the Bucks as they try and surpass the Nets if that can happen. The other big news, well, I don't know about big news, but another player that could be on the move is JaVale McGee. There have been teams that are calling about him on the Cavaliers. Now, if you don't know, the Cavaliers stunk in the East, so they're not very good. And then someone should relieve JaVale McGee of having to play for that team. So again, JaVale McGee is a player who's contributed. He's won championships in Golden State. Someone who can be another contributor. Another player who's available similarly is Aaron Gordon, power forward, according to ESPN.com. He does some really cool dunks too, so you should add him to your team for that reason. But those are some players that could be on the move, that have been on the move. As far as some local teams go, what do the Nets need? The Nets need nothing. The Knicks, however, could benefit from some perimeter shooting. Not to say that they don't have any perimeter shooters at all, but they could use one that's really good. And this is where being a Section 9 athlete comes as a benefit. They need to sign Kevin Huerter. Kevin Huerter went to Shenendehowa High School. He's from Clifton Park, New York. He's a very good three-point shooter. I think they need to go out and get him. Now, he's not a big name in the NBA, but he's a player that obviously can make it from beyond the three-point line. To be honest with you, I don't even remember what team he's on. I just remember he's from New York. I remember he signed with the Hawks. I don't know where he is. I don't care where he is. The Knicks need to get a shooter, and I want them to go and get Kevin Huerter. Or, hey, Kyle Lowry? I don't know. The Toronto has said that they're not going to trade him, but we'll see. Before I continue, I'll ask you guys maybe if you have any thoughts on the Knicks specifically, because, again, the Nets need nothing. The Nets need Kyrie Irving to stop talking, okay? That's what they need on their team. They don't need any more players. The Knicks, however, I think could really benefit from Kevin Huerter. What do you guys think?
If the Hawks could give Huerter away to the Knicks, that'd be great. In terms of, I'm a big Kevin Huerter fan. He's a great shooter, great in NBA 2K if you do play with him. Side note, but I don't know if the Hawks are going to release him, let him go on the trade block. He is too valuable of a shooter. It would be ideal if the Atlanta Hawks were to make a trade with the Knicks, and I think the Knicks, as Dan, you mentioned, of course, they need perimeter shooting. Don't think that's going to happen. I hope it does. And Kyle Lowry, the recent reports out of Toronto are saying that Lowry's going to stay put. I would love him as a Knick. He is, as you guys know, my favorite NBA player for a multitude of reasons. One, he's 6 foot and 196. Just measure that up, height and weight. It's probably considered, if you weren't an NBA tone body, fat. That's how you would consider 6 foot and 196. And Kyle Lowry is look at it, Brennan. It sort of is. It's sort of, if you look at the metrics.
What's the inch to pound ratio?
I don't know, but I think it'd be considered slightly overweight.
I feel like if it's like 1 for 10, then I feel like that's a little bit of an insult, John.
We might have to get a fact check on it. But Kyle Lowry defies the odds with this. Kyle Lowry also, not this All-Star game, but the one before, a great job winning it for his team. He's out there with the best in the NBA, and he sets a screen and wins the game for his team at that time. Kyle Lowry's invaluable. A lot of people like to, not value him as an all-star or not value him as a top player, and he's not. It hasn't been the number one option in Toronto. But in terms of a pure point guard, a guy who's going to give you 110% on the court every single night, it's Kyle Lowry, because he can't take a night off. He goes and crashes the board and gets rebounds, even though he's 6 foot and is one of the best rebounding point guards specifically in the NBA. He's a pass-first point guard because he knows, I could shoot the three, but I don't have to. And when I have better players, I'm not going to do that. So that's why I would love Lowry to be on the Knicks, and other teams who are contenders should look for him. Apparently the Raptors are going to, as of reports right now, are going to keep him. And that's just my Lowry rant that, comes every once in a while because I like him as a player a lot. Brendan, if you have any thoughts on New York's situation.
I actually do, surprisingly. I know, basketball Brendan, right? She's crazy. So I think that, when you look at the Knicks, I said it, and I'll go back to something that I said a few weeks ago, in the fact that I think it was when Harden got traded to the Nets. When I look at the Nets, I see three guys that I know their names as an outsider of basketball. The Knicks have a guy now. It's that guy, the all-star, Julius Randle. So they have a name that I know, which is big. But I think to really compete, and especially once you get to the playoffs, you got to have two. So I really think that they need to go out and get another big name guy, another playmaker that maybe has a little bit of flash. I don't know who that would be. I genuinely have zero idea, strictly because I don't know, obviously, who's on the open market. If this was hockey, I would say go and get a veteran guy who knows how to play in the playoffs, because I think that if the Knicks get into the playoffs, they're a very, very young team. From what I know, just watching games in the apartment with you guys, they are very young. I think the majority of their roster has been drafted within the last 4, 5, 6 years. So I think that get maybe a guy with a little playoff experience, because obviously none of the Knicks have playoff experience right now. But they have a guy, and that's a big step forward for the Knicks.
Yeah, and Dan, before you get in, and you'll take us through the rest of the segment. If it was hockey, Dan, Brennan, the Knicks would have, because you can't sell out completely. You can't go for a big star, nor will they get one. So you get that piece that is a veteran who's been on a pretty good team all year, and you take him because that team doesn't feel that the future in the playoffs is going to be good for them, and he adds to your team right away. Unfortunately, basketball is a little different.
Jerome McGinley at the end of his career.
Exactly. And it's a little different in the NBA, and especially, though, the main point of this is we know, all three of us, that the Knicks aren't in any position to get a star. And if they were, it still wouldn't be enough as of right now. But, there hasn't been playoff basketball for the Knicks since, I believe, 2013-14 season. So getting that back to the Garden is huge.
And what I'm trying to do right now, in case you can't tell, is do the thing like where WFAN made the Mets trade for what's his name, the catcher, Mike Piazza. I'm trying to do that right now with our show. So as I look at some of the Knicks stats right here, I see that Julius Randle leads the team in 3-point percentage and shoots over 40% from three, which is incredible. But he only makes Wait, hold on a second. I read that wrong. This is what happens when we record this late at night. He only makes about 1.9 a game. So that's I mean, you shoot 40%, but you make one. Congratulations. Kevin Huerter, he shoots 36% from the field, from three, and he makes 2.2 a game. So please trade for New York. I just want to see him as a Knick, to be honest with you. Yeah. In other NBA news, the big names that are out there, we already mentioned Lowry. Zach LaVine's name is floating around. I don't know why the Bulls would trade him. He's 25. I don't understand. Unless they got a ton for him, he should not be on the move. But the player that everyone has been talking about all year has been Bradley Beal. Free Bradley Beal from the Wizards. Get him out of there. I don't know. Do I feel bad for Bradley Beal? I mean, I guess, because, the Wizards have been, really bad this year. But they've also been extremely hard hit by the virus. They do have Russell Westbrook, who is a player who, they get so many stats and, triple doubles every night. But I don't know if I'd call him the greatest winner throughout his career. He definitely hasn't, won a championship. I don't know if I would trade Bradley Beal, though. I feel like I would keep him around until there's a season where there isn't insanity and see how it goes. I understand everyone wanting to see him on a really good team because that's what we love to do in basketball. We love to make these super teams. But if I were the Wizards, unless you're going to lose him in free agency, I would not trade Bradley Beal just because, I feel like they should keep him around until they can see when things are more normal. But that's the other big name that people have been floating around. I don't know. I'm not really riding that train. I'm not going to push that. Like I've seen so many people calling for that so far.
So there you go, a complete preview of the NBA trade deadline and our thoughts on it, our local thoughts, and Dan giving you more of a national perspective around the association. We'll now segue into our MVP of the week, the segment why you're all here. Pretty much, right? In terms of absolutely. In terms of how it works, it's a person in sports, news, entertainment, or pop culture, someone really or something that we thought had a great week. And Brennan, I want to start with you.
Okay. It's not who you think.
Really?
It's not Buddy Boeheim.
Okay.
It's not your Boeheim? Okay.
Yeah, as long as it's not Cuse
related. Time out, Dan. because it is Jim Boeheim.
Oh my
Fine.
God.
Hold on. For one specific reason. Bovada this week had odds on whether or not Jim Boeheim was going to get caught picking his nose on national television.
Take the over.
The yes was minus 130. No was even money. The odds-on favorite was that Jim Boeheim was going to pick his nose on national television. And did he? No, he did not. Let's go. That's how you represent, baby.
Mm-hmm.
The underdog, no nose picking from Jim Boeheim is my MVP of the week because that deserves to be recognized. Thank you.
That was incredible. While John recovers, I think I'll go into my MVP of the week, and it's not people betting on whether they should pick their nose or not. But again, maybe I should rethink this because obviously that was a great choice. My runner-up is Emmanuel Sanders. We put a video on Twitter of him eating chicken wings, and that's just what we need to see. The content that the people, not only of Buffalo, but of America need to watch. Emmanuel Sanders joining the team and embracing the culture. Thank you. But my MVP this week, really, really, really randomly, is going to be Matthew McConaughey because while I was searching for my MVP, I learned that there is some buzz about him running, I believe, for the governor of Texas. But here's the thing. No one has any clue what his politics are. No one knows if he's a Republican, Democrat. No one has any idea what his agenda is. And I think that is the most Matthew McConaughey thing ever. He's going to run for governor, and no one's going to know what he stands for or what he wants to do. And should you vote for him? I don't know. Maybe you should. But I feel like he needs to be my MVP just for running for public office and not telling anyone anything.
Dan, can you imagine McConaughey's political ads? Because they're just gonna be like the Buick ad. They're just gonna be the Buick commercials. Like him strolling down like an Austin street, way later than he should be, and just like this message is approved by Matthew McConaughey.
We all want to see it. We all want to see it. I need to see this. I do. I really do.
Yeah, McConaughey, during this pandemic, by the way, has been teaching at the University of Texas acting classes. And one of the funniest things, and I can't, because I just didn't have it in front of me because I was not preparing to talk about this, but some student, McConaughey tweeted something, like a picture of him or whatever, and some student was like, "Can you grade my paper? It's been like a month." So McConaughey's a little behind in his teaching responsibilities at the University of Texas, but hey, maybe you need someone like him in politics. You really can't figure or phase anyone out who, is unrealistic nowadays in terms of getting into the political sphere.
He has an official title. He is the University of Texas's Minister of Culture.
Wow.
Wow.
That's a Minister of Culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only one.
Wow.
Horns down.
Good to know. I don't know how to follow either of this, but with strong MVP, well, I don't know what Brennan's it was, but it was something. In terms of mine, it's what the Yes Network is preparing to do on March 24th. They're preparing to give 2 innings of their Yes Yankees versus Blue Jays broadcast to the Michael Kay Show. Michael Kay, who's the regular play-by-play voice of the Yankees. Don LaGreca, his radio partner, as well as Peter Rosenberg. They're going to do 2 innings. It's for a good cause, and it's out of the box. It's very, I think, a really cool idea. Look, people like to believe, especially in the New York Yankees and baseball in general, that it's gospel and that it would be sacrosanct to bring in these guys to just pretty much not pay attention to the game because I don't think they'll be, giving you their thoughts on the prospects that we might be seeing. I think it's going to be very lighthearted for 2 innings. You can look at this, and usually I am that person that looks at this, and it's a lack of professionalism or, there's some tradition that needs to be upheld. In this, it's spring training baseball. I think we hold it way too, tightly. It's fun. It's going to be a huge rating for Yes, or at least higher than it would have been if it was just a normal spring training game. And it's going to be fun. It's going to be must-watch TV if you're a listener of the Michael Kay Show program, which I am, to see what they're going to say. Don LaGreca is a Mets fan and is going to be in the Yes Network booth. And Peter Rosenberg is sort of a Baltimore Oriole fan. So it's, they're an AL East rival, but he's not that passionate in his fandom. but Don LaGreca is, so it'll be interesting to see the dialogue and the back and forth between those three. And I commend Yes on doing it because Yes, I think, is regarded as that the old guard sort of in TV networks where they really don't think outside the box, where other sports and other major networks, especially in the New York area, are willing to do so. So I think this is a really cool thing. It is for a good cause, and it's my MVP of the week. Unfortunately, it's not about picking noses or Matthew McConaughey running for state government, which this was a strong MVP. I think our strongest MVP segment to date in terms of being well-rounded.
I'm glad.
Yeah. I don't know how we're going to follow it, but we are going to try. We will give you the Sunday game picks. NCAA tournament is today. There's a lot of games to choose from, and we'll give you our thoughts, a pick on every single game that you will see today. That's coming up after the break. You're listening and watching to the MVP show on VIC Radio Ithaca and on YouTube.
Hey besties, if you love VIC Radio as much as we do, you want to know what's going on in the studio, or you want to stay in the VIC loop, why not follow us on our Twitter at VIC Radio and our Instagram, which is also at VIC Radio. Keep listening to the best of what's next, your favorite indie music station.
Welcome back to the MVP show on VIC Radio Ithaca, as well as on YouTube for those who want to watch. Alongside Dan Passante and Brennan Miller, I'm John Vicari, and we've talked a lot on today's episode. We've delved into college basketball with Syracuse. We talked about NFL free agency. We talked about the NBA trade deadline. Our MVP of the week was all over the place, including Jim Boeheim and what his nose was doing, and that the fact that there were odds on that. I don't know if it's the downfall of this country, but it's definitely concerning that was something you could bet on. In terms of serious college basketball now, we will give you our Sunday...
Yeah.
Oh, very
Yeah.
serious. We will give you...
Serious. Come on now.
Very serious. We will give
People
you
want
our...
money on that.
Yeah. We will give you our Sunday game picks for the Division I men's NCAA basketball tournament. And where we begin, and in terms of time, it's not going to be that because at the time of this recording, we don't know that the time and the schedule for Sunday's games, but we do know the matchups. So we'll start in the Midwest region, and we will start with the Battle of Illinois between Illinois, and Loyola Chicago. A huge in-state matchup. The Ramblers and Sister Jean, who made the trip to Indiana against the number one seed led by Kofi Coburn of Christ the King. That's where he went to high school, local school to me. And we have Illinois across the board for a lot of reasons. One, this isn't as strong a Loyola Chicago team as it was 2 years ago. And Illinois is just so darn good. Kofi Coburn inside, a lot of shooters on the outside. They're the number one seed in the Midwest region. No reason to pick an upset here in terms of the matchup. It's going to be close, and especially closer than Illinois in their round of 64 matchup. But Loyola Chicago will fall, we all three think. Dan, a Pac-12 versus Big 12 matchup.
So the number 12 Oregon State Beavers are taking on the number 4 Oklahoma State Cowboys. You guys got the Cowboys, and I got the Beavers. And this is March Madness. Do I need a reason? No, I don't. I'm taking the Beavers in this one. Earlier today, they beat Tennessee 70-56. That's nothing to sneeze at, folks. This is a 12 seed, and again, like I said, this is March Madness. Does Oklahoma State beat a borderline insurance company in Liberty? No. You can pick whoever you want. So I'm taking the Beavers.
Yeah, I have Oklahoma State, and Brennan does as well, just because one man, and that man's name is Cade Cunningham. Probably going to be a top 3 pick in the NBA draft, if not number 1 overall. The guy is just so darn talented, and that's why we have Oklahoma State across the board. I'll take the next one. It's Houston against Rutgers. Very interesting game, I would say. Houston is the 2 seed, and Rutgers an upset as the number 10 seed in the first round, and that was a win over Clemson, and it was an ugly game to watch. I'll be honest with you. When I was watching the Syracuse game, I'd peek my head over, because, split screen, obviously, to the Rutgers game, and every time you looked, there was a turnover or just a terribly missed shot, but Rutgers got it done, and that's what's important. In this game, I so badly want to take the Scarlet Knights, but I think their run is over. It was a great thing that they return to the NCAA tournament, but it's over against Houston, the American Conference, and one of the probably will be the last team remaining who is not in the Power 5 conference because the Big East is especially weak this year. Although, we don't know how far Villanova is going to go, or Creighton, or Georgetown for that matter, but unless they lost yesterday, again, recording, we don't know, but I would say Houston is probably the strongest of the not Power 5 teams remaining, and that's why we have it across the board.
All right, I'm next. Get ready for a lot of Brennan here because I have the next 3 games.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, first one is going to be the final one in, the Midwest? Yeah.
Yes.
Syracuse versus West Virginia. Syracuse came out. We talked about them earlier. I'm not going to bloviate on Syracuse again because they just put up a bunch of points. Buddy Boeheim is walking bucket. Very good. West Virginia, they're also a very, very good team. They have beaten a lot. They have quite a few Tier 1 or Quad 1 wins, and they have proven that they can beat good teams. That is probably the reason that I am alone in picking Syracuse to win this game. But like I said, teams have trouble dissecting the 2-3 zone when Syracuse comes out to play. And teams that are dangerous in March are teams that can shoot the 3 ball, and Syracuse proved that they can do that tonight. Because I don't know, I was watching the game in there, and they look pretty good. So I'm going to pick Syracuse. Everyone else has West Virginia. Let's move to it's the West, right? We're moving to the West? No,
moving
the
to the South.
South.
Yeah.
We're going to go talk Texas Tech and Arkansas. Texas Tech and Arkansas. Texas Tech, like I mentioned before, my other college basketball team that I like to follow, and they are 1.5 point favorites over Arkansas, despite being the lower seed. Arkansas played very, very tough against Colgate today. Dan and I had a Colgate as our upset, rightfully so. Up until about halfway through the second half, Colgate was playing very, very well against the Razorbacks. And Texas Tech came out and showed that they are a team that needs to be reckoned with as well, with a pretty handy win over Utah State, a game that a lot of people were calling Utah State would have had a chance. But no, I have Texas Tech, Dan has Texas Tech, and John, for some reason, has picked Arkansas. I get it's only a 1.5 point spread, but I think Texas Tech is one of the top 20 teams in the country, and I don't think Arkansas is. So I'm going to pick the better team, and I'm going to go with Texas Tech.
That's some reason.
The next one.
Brennan, that's some reasons because they're my Final Four team. That's the reason.
Good point. Yeah, you can't really go against them, can you?
No.
Yeah, that's what happens when you back yourself into a corner. The next game, Oral Roberts versus Florida. Oral Roberts, the big upset, the first big upset. We had a few of them today, or on Friday, excuse me. But they were the first big one. Took down Ohio State in what was a very close game that went to overtime. Usually in overtime, the underdog kind of falters. Oral Roberts, I just called Oral State. Oral Roberts did not. They came out and they were able to finish off their Big Ten opponent. That being said, they're only 8.5 point dogs to Florida. Florida played Virginia Tech today in a game where I had Virginia Tech winning in what was the only pick'em of the first round. But it wasn't a great performance. There is one guy, and I forget his name, that plays for Florida, like 7'3", plays down low, and just absolutely dominated Virginia Tech. I think that there's a good chance that he comes out and does that again against Oral Roberts. That being said, I have picked Oral Roberts to win this game. As has John. Dan has probably correctly picked Florida, but I love a Cinderella, especially when it's a 15 seed. And with that, I'm going with Oral Roberts. And then I'm done. So you guys can take the rest of the game.
Wow.
Well, people, this is March Madness. We don't need a reason as to what we're going to pick. Just fill it out.
We don't need logic.
No, you don't need to know these things. People who have no idea end up winning the tournament every year, and it's just like a normal thing. So I don't know who Oral Roberts is, but I'm not going to pick him. I'm going to take the Gators. So let's the next game on our slate is the Wisconsin Badgers and the number 1 Baylor Bears. All three of us have the Bears. Wisconsin beat North Carolina in the first round, and nothing against North Carolina. But the ACC wasn't great this year. That's not really an accomplishment. I still don't think they're a great team. So let's take Baylor in that one, shall we? And for our final game, we have the Villanova Wildcats in the North Texas Mean Green.
Awesome.
Now, their name is the Mean Green. How do you pick against that? I have North Texas. I don't think Villanova's great this year, and they lost their best player a few weeks ago, so that's going to be tough for them. But again, Jay Wright is a great coach. It's really, you don't have to explain yourself when you pick Villanova. They're a great team. You guys have Villanova. Again, that's a great pick. We'll see how it goes. We could all be right. We could all be wrong. Who knows, people? This is the most wonderful time of the year when it comes to sports. It's so much fun.
It is, and those are our picks for the Sunday slate in the men's NCAA Division I tournament. Before we go, just want to note something, and I don't know how this story has developed in the last 2 days, but it is an absolute shame that pictures have been floating around about the women's basketball tournament, which starts today, compared to the men's in terms of training facility. Look, people know, and we know this as well. The men's tournament brings in way more money than the women's tournament. That's absolutely 100% a fact. But in terms of the training facility, it's not like the women's tournament is in a space where there wasn't the space, for lack of a better term, to give them the same equipment and the same meals, because that's another thing that's been floating around, as the men's tournament. No reason for that. You want, as the NCAA, to have your athletes as well fed and as in best shape possible so the games are better. That's just a fact. I don't understand how the NCAA, one, optically make this decision, because you know people have phones and that it's going to be taken away, and two, in terms of doing this makes your product worse. And that's just the, not morally right side of looking at this. It's still wrong because it's not even a smart financial decision to do this. You want the athletes at the best, because if someone who is not a usual viewer tuning in because of one of the men's games, a blowout on Sunday, and they turn on a game that's today, and it's a really good one, they might stay with it, and that brings in money for you. So even if you're not, because the morals obviously are not correct, but if you're just looking at this as a sheer money-making thing, come on. And you guys can give your thoughts on this, which I'm sure will, in agreement. But just one thing to get off before our final show, and maybe they fixed this since the time of this recording, but we'll see.
No, the NCAA sucks.
Wow.
I will stand by that. I'm not an athlete. I don't have to abide by any of their rules, so I'll say it. The NCAA is absolutely a money-making organization. They only care about the tournament that brings in money, which is the men's tournament. And with that being said, that is a fact, and we can go look at the numbers that the men's tournament makes more money than the women's tournament does, but that doesn't matter. All of those athletes are athletes that are under the NCAA seal. They are under the NCAA crown. And there's a little thing in the United States government called Title IX that means you have to provide equal opportunities to both genders, whether it be men's or women's teams. And that is clearly not what the NCAA is doing. The fact that there hasn't been some kind of Title IX violation at this point is kind of absurd to me, because the National Collegiate Athletic Association has had opportunities and does have opportunities to make this right. And their only statement has been, we didn't have the space, which was then debunked about 15 minutes later.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't know that the NCAA is just a bunch of hypocrites and really just the worst, then you just need to open your eyes. They've been doing this for a while. I mean, how about the fact that they brought back football players during a time where there was no vaccine, no treatment for a deadly virus, just to make money. All these fall athletes that didn't get to play, all these spring athletes didn't get to play in Division 1, 2, 3, doesn't matter. The NCAA knew as long as they got football, they'd be all right. I'm sure they celebrated the fact that spring sports didn't happen because they knew they'd lose money. They don't actually care about athletes playing. They only care about, obviously the bottom line. And, if you're going to only care about the bottom line, then say that. Stop being, stop standing for things that you don't actually do in practice. They're a business, obviously, and they are the worst, as usual. And that's just another example.
Yep, all three in agreement on the recent situation regarding the women's tournament. That starts today. The men's, as we mentioned, is happening, as it's been happening, and the games continue today. And I think this has been a great show all around. We got funny at times, we got serious, and I think all around we had fun doing it. So this has been the MVP show. If you're listening on VIC, follow The Herd is Next. For Brennan Miller and Dan Passante, I'm John Vicari. Thank you for tuning in.